The pale blue lights of Aurora 9 Station flickered through the crystalline dome, casting ethereal patterns across the laboratory floor. Outside, the harsh landscape of Xi'an 5 stretched toward the horizon, a mix of rust-colored desert and sparse blue-tinged vegetation that glowed faintly as the planet's twin moons began their nightly ascent. Dr. Alex Carter adjusted his microscope, brushing a strand of brown hair from his forehead. At 32, the Earth biologist had spent most of his adult life studying interspecies biology, but nothing had prepared him for the wonders of Xi'an 5. 6 weeks into his assignment at the outpost, he still found himself marveling at even the simplest organisms they'd collected. "Fascinating," he muttered, making notes on his tablet. "The cellular division pattern is remarkably similar to Earth reptiles, but the luminescent properties are unlike anything in our databases." Behind him, the laboratory door hissed open. Alex turned to find Kelia standing in the entrance, her pale blue skin catching the ambient light. Like all Xionians, she possessed the natural ability of bioluminescence, a soft, purple-blue glow that pulsed gently beneath her skin, intensifying with emotional states. At the equivalent of 28 Earth years, she was relatively young for her species, assigned to Aurora 9 as a linguistic biological liaison. "Have you found something interesting, Alex?" she asked, her lilting accent making his name sound almost melodic. Alex smiled, gesturing toward the microscope. "I believe so. These reproductive cells from the ornithopter specimens show remarkable hatching patterns. They're somewhat similar to how certain Earth organisms reproduce." Kelia approached cautiously. Her white hair fell to the middle of her back, tied with intricate luminescent threads that pulsed in sync with her emotional state. She wore the standard Psionian research uniform, a seamless bodysuit of muted gray with blue trim that seemed to shimmer with tiny points of light. "May I see?" she asked, her large teal eyes blinking with curiosity. Alex nodded and stepped aside. As Kelia leaned toward the microscope, he couldn't help but notice how the light beneath her skin brightened slightly, a sign of intellectual excitement that he'd come to recognize. The pattern recognition algorithms suggest their mating behavior might share common elements with Earth vertebrates. Alex continued, pulling up holographic data displays. "I received some comparative materials from Dr. Stevens yesterday that might help illustrate the similarities." "Dr. Stevens?" Kelia asked, looking up from the microscope. "My supervisor back on Earth. She's been sending research materials to help with the classification process." Alex tapped a few commands on the console. She included some visual references of mating behaviors across species. The hologram projector hummed to life, and Alex scrolled through the index. "Here we go. Basic reproductive patterns in Earth vertebrates. This should help explain what I'm seeing in the ornithopter samples." The hologram flickered, and suddenly the lab was filled with a high-definition video feed. Alex froze as he realized his error. Instead of the clinical diagrams he'd expected, the display showed an intimate scene between two humans, a passionate embrace in what appeared to be a greenhouse setting, soft lighting highlighting bare skin, the unmistakable sounds of intimate breathing. "Wait, that's not—" Alex fumbled with the controls, his face flushing crimson. "Computer, end playback immediately." But the damage was done. Kelia stood perfectly still, her bioluminescence flickering erratically before suddenly shutting off completely, a reaction Alex had never witnessed before. Her teal eyes had widened to an impossible degree, fixed on the space where the hologram had been. "Kelia, I'm so sorry," Alex began, mortified. "That wasn't what I intended to show you. It must have been mixed in with the research materials." Kelia remained motionless, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. "You do this all the time?" The horror in her tone was unmistakable. Before Alex could respond, she backed away, her skin now pulsing with jagged patterns of distressed light. "That was physical coupling? Between humans? Each word seemed to cause her physical discomfort. "Kelia, please let me explain." But she was already at the door, her voice rising. "Such violation of bodily sanctity. Such primitive physical contamination." Her luminescence flared in sharp, agitated bursts. "This is how humans mate? It's not just about reproduction," Alex tried to explain, approaching slowly. "It's also about emotional connection. About—" "Emotional?" Kilia's voice cracked. "What emotion requires such invasive physical contact? Such brutality?" Without waiting for an answer, she fled the laboratory, leaving Alex standing helplessly amid his research, the gravity of his cultural misstep beginning to sink in. By morning, word had spread throughout Aurora 9. Alex could feel the stares as he made his way to the station's command center. Lieutenant Mara Lynn intercepted him in the corridor, her white and blue uniform crisp as always, her expression carefully neutral. "I hear you've had an incident with our Zeonian liaison," she said quietly, falling into step beside him. Alex groaned. "It was an accident. A misplaced file in my research materials." "An accident that's now the talk of the station," Mara replied. "Dr. Miral has called for an emergency session of the station council to discuss, and I quote, the corrupting influence of Earth physiology displays." "It was a simple misunderstanding," Alex protested. "I can explain the biological context, make it clear that it wasn't meant to offend." Mara's expression softened slightly. "Alex, you need to understand, for Zionians, physical intimacy as we know it doesn't exist. Their reproduction involves a communal bioluminescent ritual, where genetic material is exchanged through light energy. The concept of bodies touching for reproduction is completely alien to them, literally." "I know that," Alex said, running a hand through his hair. "I've studied their biology. But surely they understand that different species have different methods of reproduction." "Understanding intellectually is different from witnessing it," Mara countered. "Imagine if you saw a species that reproduced by dissolving their internal organs. You might know it happens, but seeing it would still be shocking." Alex sighed. "So what do I do?" "For now, lay low. Let me handle the council. And maybe try to talk to Kelia when things calm down. She's your best chance at cultural reconciliation." Finding Kelia proved difficult. She had withdrawn to the Zionian meditation chamber, a section of the station specifically designed to mimic the temples of her homeworld. When Alex finally gained access, he found her sitting cross-legged on a platform, surrounded by bioluminescent plants, native to Zion 5, their soft glow pulsing in rhythm with her own dimmed light. She didn't look up when he entered. "You should not be here." "I came to apologize," Alex said, remaining near the entrance. "What happened was unintentional, but I understand now how disturbing it must have been for you." "You cannot understand," Kelia replied, her voice flat. "Your species normalizes physical violation as a means of connection. It is barbaric." Alex winced at her choice of words. "It's not violation, Kelia. It's consensual interaction between individuals who care for each other." "Care?" Her light pulsed briefly. "How can forceful physical intrusion demonstrate care?" "It's not forceful," Alex explained patiently. "It's gentle, loving, an expression of deep emotional connection." Kelia finally looked at him. Her teal eyes narrowed. "Your species equates violence with love? This makes it worse, not better." Alex realized he was getting nowhere. He needed a different approach. "Would you allow me to explain how humans express affection in ways that don't involve reproduction? There's more to human connection than what you saw." "Your explanation cannot undo what I witnessed," Kelia said. But her luminescence flickered with what Alex recognized as reluctant curiosity. "However, scientific understanding requires complete data." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next few days, Alex prepared a careful presentation on human expressions of affection, focusing on non-sexual interactions, hand-holding, hugging, forehead kisses. He assembled scholarly articles, carefully vetted visuals, and cultural context from Earth's diverse societies. When he finally presented it to Kelia in a private session, he was careful to keep everything clinical and respectful. "So humans touch hands as a greeting?" Kelia asked, studying the holographic display of two people shaking hands. "Yes, it's one of many ways we establish connection," Alex explained. "Touch, for humans, creates a sense of trust and belonging. But why require physical contact? Psionians communicate complex emotions through luminescence patterns. No touching necessary," she demonstrated, her skin rippling with gentle waves of blue-purple light that expressed something between curiosity and skepticism. "Humans don't have that ability," Alex pointed out. "We've evolved different methods of connection. Touch releases chemicals in our brains that create feelings of bonding and trust." "Chemicals could be synthesized," Kelia countered. "Physical contact seems inefficient." Alex smiled. "Not everything is about efficiency. Some things are about the experience itself." Their discussion was interrupted by an alert ping. Dr. Merrill, the head of Zionian biology at Aurora 9, and a senior member of the station council, requested their immediate presence in the conference chamber. Dr. Merrill was waiting when they arrived, his dark purple skin barely luminescent, a sign of his advanced age and formality. His ceremonial regalia, bearing the emblem of Gamet purity, a luminous lotus, draped across his shoulders. "I see you've been conducting educational sessions," he said, his tone making the words sound like an accusation. "I've been explaining human cultural practices," Alex replied carefully. "You've been exposing our liaison to potentially corrupting material," Dr. Merrill countered. "The council has received multiple complaints about your visual demonstrations." "I've shown nothing inappropriate," Alex defended. "Only basic expressions of human affection. Any display of physical contact for emotional purposes contradicts Zionian spiritual teachings," Dr. Merrill stated flatly. "Such concepts threaten the purity of our genetic exchange rituals." Kelia, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke up. "Is scientific understanding not worth the risk of exposure to different ideas?" Dr. Merrill's luminescence flickered in surprise. "You defend these displays?" "I seek knowledge," Kelia replied carefully. "Understanding does not equal endorsement." "Nevertheless," Dr. Merrill continued, "the Council has decided all materials depicting human physical intimacy, including affectionate touching, are to be restricted. Dr. Carter's cultural education program is suspended pending review." As they left the conference chamber, Alex felt a mixture of frustration and defeat. "I'm sorry, Kelia. I was trying to build understanding, not create problems." To his surprise, Kelia's luminescence pulsed with a pattern he hadn't seen before, something almost defiant. "Dr. Merrill speaks for traditional values," she said quietly. "But not all Zionians share his views. Some of us question the old restrictions." Before Alex could respond, the station's emergency alert system blared to life. Lieutenant Mara Lynn's voice echoed through the corridors. "Attention all personnel. Category 3 sandstorm approaching from the eastern quadrant. All exterior systems are to be secured immediately. This is not a drill." Alex and Kelia exchanged glances. "The atmospheric recyclers," Alex said, his mind racing to the external units that processed Zion 5's thin atmosphere to make it breathable inside the station. "They will not survive a Category 3 storm without additional shielding," Kelia confirmed, her luminescence shifting to an urgent pattern. Without another word, they both ran toward the Environmental Control Center. The sandstorms of Zion 5 were legendary, microscopic particles of crystallized minerals that could slice through standard shielding like razors. If the recyclers failed, The station would have less than 12 hours of breathable air. When they arrived, the control center was already in chaos. Engineers rushed to reinforce the external shields, but Lieutenant Lin shook her head as she saw them enter. "The primary recycler array is already showing damage," she reported grimly. "We need to activate the emergency protocols, but the system is rejecting the commands." "The sand might have already compromised the external sensor array," Alex suggested, studying the diagnostic screens. "We need to manually override from the maintenance hub." "Too dangerous," Lin objected. "The maintenance corridor is already experiencing pressure fluctuations from the storm." "I know the systems," Kelia interjected, "and my physiology is better adapted to pressure changes than humans." "I'm going with you," Alex said immediately. Lin looked between them. "You have 20 minutes before I seal that section. After that, we'll have to accept the losses and focus on preserving the core systems." The maintenance corridor was a narrow tube of transparent aluminum that ran along the station's exterior. Already, the approaching storm had turned the sky a sickening orange-red, and the howling of wind could be heard even through the reinforced structure. "The override junction is at the end of this section," Kelia explained as they hurried forward. "We need to manually reroute the atmospheric intake through the secondary filters." As they reached the halfway point, a violent tremor shook the corridor. Alex stumbled, catching himself against the wall, just as a section of the exterior plating tore free, exposing them to the increasing pressure differential. "We need to move faster," he shouted over the growing roar. Kelia nodded, her luminescence brightening to provide better visibility as the storm began to obscure the natural light. They had almost reached the junction when Alex spotted movement outside the corridor, something large and sinuous, weaving through the initial waves of the sandstorm. "Kelia, look," he pointed. "Something's out there." She turned, her eyes widening. "Sand serpents! They surface during storms to hunt disoriented prey." As if responding to her words, a massive creature, like a winged reptile with multiple segmented limbs, slammed against the corridor wall. Cracks spiderwebbed across the transparent aluminum. "The junction!" Alex yelled, pulling Kelia forward as the creature struck again. They reached the control panel, just as the corridor began to depressurize, alarms blaring around them. Working together, fingers flying across the controls, they managed to reroute the atmospheric systems. The recyclers hummed back to life, their protective shields extending to full coverage. "We need to get back before," Alex began. But his words were cut short as the sand serpent struck again, this time breaking through the weakened corridor wall. The explosive decompression would have pulled them both out into the storm, if not for the emergency bulkheads that slammed down, sealing off the breach. Unfortunately, it also sealed Alex and Kelia in the junction room with no direct path back to the main station. "Lieutenant Lin," Alex called into his communicator. "We're trapped in the recycler junction. The corridor has been compromised." Static answered him for several seconds before Lin's voice broke through. "Understood. The storm is interfering with communications. We're reading your location. Hang tight. We'll find a way to extract you once the storm passes." "How long?" Kelia asked, her luminescence dimmed to conserve energy. "The storm?" Alex checked the meteorological data on the junction's small display. "At least 6 hours before it's safe enough for a rescue team." They looked at each other in the dimly lit junction room, the howling of the storm and the occasional thud of the sand serpent against the exterior, the only sounds breaking the silence. "Well," Alex said with a forced smile, "I guess we have time for that cultural discussion after all." To his surprise, Kelia's luminescence pulsed with what he recognized as the Zionian equivalent of nervous laughter. As the hours passed, confined in the small junction room, Alex and Kelia found themselves engaged in the most honest conversation they'd had since his arrival on Zion 5. The emergency situation had stripped away pretenses, leaving only two beings trying to understand each other. "So, in your culture," Alex asked, sitting with his back against the wall, How do you express affection? Not reproduction, but caring for another person? Kilia, seated across from him, considered the question. Her luminescence had settled into a gentle, steady glow that provided most of the light in the room. We share light, she finally said. When psionians care for each other, we synchronize our bioluminescence. It creates a resonance that can be felt, a harmony of energy patterns. That sounds beautiful, Alex said sincerely. It is, Kilia agreed. During the luminal rite, our reproduction ceremony, entire communities join their light together. The combined energy guides the genetic material to optimal combinations. The children born of these unions belong to the community, raised by all. So there's no concept of exclusive relationships, pairs who choose each other specifically? Kilia's luminescence flickered thoughtfully. We form deep bonds with specific individuals. Yes. But those bonds are expressed through light resonance, not physical interactions. On Earth, physical touch is how many humans express their deepest connections, Alex explained. It's not about reproduction, most of the time. It's about comfort, reassurance, belonging. But why must it be so invasive? Kilia asked, her voice free of judgment for the first time when discussing the topic. Alex chose his words carefully. It doesn't have to be. A gentle hand on someone's shoulder can communicate support. Holding hands can express solidarity and connection. He hesitated, then extended his open palm, resting it on the floor between them. Like this. Kilia stared at his hand, her luminescence pulsing with uncertainty. This is affection? It can be, Alex said. It's an invitation to connect, nothing more. You can decline. For several long moments, Kilia remained still. Then, with deliberate slowness, she extended her own hand. Her fingers hovered above his palm, not quite touching. In my culture, she said softly, this would be considered an intimate act. In mine as well, Alex replied, but a respectful one. Her fingers trembled slightly, then lightly touched his palm. The contact was barely there, a whisper of connection, but Alex remained perfectly still, letting her set the boundaries. Her skin was cooler than a human's, with a subtle texture like fine silk. As they touched, Kilia's luminescence shifted into patterns Alex had never seen before, delicate whirls of light that spiraled from her fingertips up her arm. Her eyes widened in surprise. Your body temperature, she whispered. It creates an unexpected resonance with my light. They stayed like that, barely touching. As Kilia's luminescence danced across her skin in response to the simple contact. For Alex, it was a profound moment of cross-species connection. For Kilia, it appeared to be a revelation. The moment was broken by a crackling from Alex's communicator. Arter, do you read? The storm is weakening. Extraction team preparing to depart in 30 minutes. Alex reluctantly moved his hand to respond. We read you, Lieutenant. We're both fine. As he turned back to Kilia, he found her examining her own hand, her expression thoughtful. That was not what I expected, she admitted. What did you expect? Alex asked. Revulsion. Discomfort. Her luminescence pulsed softly. Instead, I felt curiosity, and something else I cannot name. Before Alex could respond, a violent tremor shook the junction room. The sand serpent had returned, throwing itself against the exterior with renewed force. That bulkhead won't hold much longer, Alex said, checking the structural integrity readings. We need to move to the interior section. They relocated to a smaller maintenance closet, further from the exterior wall. The space was tight, forcing them to sit close together. As another impact rocked the junction, Kilia instinctively grabbed Alex's hand, her luminescence flaring with alarm. This time, there was nothing hesitant about the contact. her fingers intertwined with his, holding tight as the creature outside continued its assault. "I'm sorry," she said, attempting to withdraw when she realized what she'd done. "Don't be," Alex said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "This is what humans do when they're scared or need support. We hold on to each other." Kelia's luminescence pulsed rapidly, but she didn't pull away. "It is not unpleasant," she admitted. They sat in silence. Hands joined, as the storm gradually began to subside. When the extraction team finally cut through the sealed bulkhead hours later, they found the human and the Zionian still sitting together, an unspoken understanding having formed between them. The aftermath of the storm brought unexpected changes to Aurora 9. With critical systems damaged, humans and Zionians were forced to work closely together on repairs, setting aside cultural differences in the face of practical necessity. This cooperation created openings for dialogue that might otherwise never have occurred. Taking advantage of this shift, Alex proposed something unprecedented, a cultural exchange festival that would allow both species to share aspects of their cultures in a controlled, respectful environment. To his surprise, the station council, perhaps recognizing the value of the cooperation that had emerged during the crisis, approved the event. "Nothing explicit," Dr. Morral had stipulated, his luminescence pulsing with reluctant acceptance. "Nothing that contradicts our core teachings." "Of course," Alex had agreed. "This is about finding common ground, not highlighting differences." The preparation for the festival became a station-wide project. Humans gathered artwork, music, and literature that expressed their concepts of connection without explicit physicality. Zionians prepared demonstrations of their light resonance traditions, including simplified versions of their community ceremonies. Throughout the process, Alex and Kelia worked closely together, their experience during the storm having formed a bond that transcended their cultural differences. Kelia had become noticeably more open to learning about human expressions of affection, though she still maintained certain boundaries. "This painting," she said one evening, studying a holographic reproduction of two humans embracing while watching a sunset. "It communicates connection without the invasive aspects I found troubling." "Exactly," Alex agreed. "Physical touch exists on a spectrum in human culture. From a handshake," he demonstrated the formal greeting, "to a hug between friends." He pantomimed the action without touching her. "To more intimate forms of contact. All are expressions of connection, just with different meanings and contexts." Kilia's luminescence shifted into a pattern Alex had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. "Perhaps I judged too quickly, based on a single example." The night of the festival arrived with an atmosphere of cautious optimism. The station's central atrium had been transformed, with sections dedicated to each culture's expressions of community and connection. Humans demonstrated poetry readings, displayed artwork, and performed instrumental music that evoked emotional resonance. Zionians created elaborate light displays, synchronizing their luminescence in patterns that told stories of their history and values. As the event progressed, Alex noticed something remarkable. Humans and Zionians were genuinely engaging with each other's presentations, asking questions, showing interest rather than judgment. Even Dr. Morral could be seen listening attentively to a human musician explain how different musical tones could evoke specific emotional responses. "This is working better than I expected," Lieutenant Lin commented, joining Alex as he observed the interactions. "I've never seen the two groups mixing so freely." "Crisis has a way of breaking down barriers," Alex replied. "The storm forced cooperation, and cooperation bred familiarity." "And familiarity?" Lin asked with a knowing smile. "Leads to understanding," Alex finished, his eyes finding Kelia across the atrium. She was demonstrating a light resonance technique to a group of fascinated human engineers, her luminescence more vibrant than he'd ever seen it. As if sensing his attention, Kelia looked up, meeting his gaze. Her luminescence shifted into a pattern he'd only seen once before, during their moment of connection in the junction room. She excused herself from the engineers and made her way toward him. "Your festival appears to be a success," she said as she approached.
"Our festival," Alex corrected. "I couldn't have done this without your support."
Before she could respond, an alert chimed throughout the station. The calm voice of the automated system announced, "Attention all personnel. The station council has called an emergency session. All department heads and cultural liaisons are required to attend immediately." Alex and Kelia exchanged concerned glances. The timing couldn't be coincidence. The council chamber was already filled when they arrived. Dr. Miral sat at the center of the Gionian representatives, his luminescence unreadable. Opposite him, the human delegation waited with expressions ranging from confusion to concern. "The council has been presented with a formal complaint," Dr. Miral began without preamble. "Regarding the content of tonight's cultural exhibition." Alex felt his heart sink. "What specifically is at issue?" "The artwork depicting physical contact between humans," Dr. Miral stated. "Several conservative members of our community find it contrary to our teachings on bodily sanctity." A senior Shionian council member, even older than Dr. Miral, with barely perceptible luminescence, spoke up. "These displays normalize behaviors that undermine our most sacred beliefs. Physical contact for emotional purposes is a slippery slope toward contamination of our genetic purity." "With respect," Alex countered, "the artwork shows nothing explicit. They depict moments of human connection, a parent holding a child, friends supporting each other, couples expressing affection. These are fundamental to human emotional health. What is fundamental to one species may be corruptive to another." The senior council member replied, "We propose an immediate end to the festival and restrictions on all depictions of human physical contact within the station." Murmurs broke out among both delegations. Such restrictions would effectively end any meaningful cultural exchange. "If I may speak," Kelia said, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, and the chamber fell silent. "As the appointed liaison between our peoples, I have studied human culture extensively these past weeks," she began, her luminescence steady and bright. "I, too, was initially disturbed by aspects of human physical interaction. But I have come to understand that judging another species by our standards is neither scientific nor fair." Her luminescence shifted into complex patterns as she continued. "The touch of a human hand does not contaminate. Their expressions of care through physical contact are no more invasive than our expressions through light. They are simply different languages of connection." Dr. Merrill's luminescence flickered with surprise. "You defend these practices?" "I defend understanding," Kelia replied. "The warmth I experienced when Dr. Carter sheltered me during the storm was not about reproduction or violation. It was about care, about protection, about recognizing another being's value." The senior council member's voice was cold. "How can other species treat their bodies so crudely?" Kilia's luminescence intensified, pulsing with conviction. "I have seen love, not contamination, but sharing, respect. If we prohibit understanding, we will never grasp the true value of connection." Before anyone could respond, the chamber door opened, and Lieutenant Lin entered with urgent steps. "Forgive the interruption, but we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Central Command." The large display screen activated, showing the face of an authoritative woman in an Earth government uniform. "This is Director Hammond of the Interplanetary Diplomatic Corps. We've been monitoring the situation at Aurora 9 with concern." Dr. Merrill straightened. "This is an internal matter of cultural accommodation." "With respect, Doctor," Director Hammond replied, "it is a matter of fundamental rights. The expression of emotional connection, including through appropriate physical contact, is considered a basic human right. Restrictions on such expressions would violate our cooperation agreements. The tension in the chamber escalated. The conservative Zionian faction began pulsing with agitated light patterns, while the human delegation exchanged worried glances. "We are not asking humans to abandon their practices," the senior council member clarified, "merely to keep them private and not display them where they might influence our younger generation. Such segregation would defeat the purpose of our mission here," Director Hammond countered. Aurora 9 was established as a collaborative outpost where both species could learn from each other. As the argument intensified, Alex noticed Kelia's luminescence begin to pulse in an unusual pattern, bright, then dim, in a rhythmic sequence that caught the attention of the Zionian council members. Dr. Meral actually gasped, his own luminescence responding involuntarily. "What is she doing?" Lieutenant Lin whispered to Alex. "I'm not sure," he replied, watching as the pattern spread. Other Zionians in the chamber unconsciously beginning to synchronize their luminescence with Kelia's. "It's a unity pattern," a young Psionian researcher whispered from nearby. "An ancient form used during disputes to remind everyone of our shared light. She's invoking community harmony." The effect was remarkable. As more Zionians joined the pattern, the hostility in the chamber visibly diminished. Even the most conservative members couldn't help but respond to the deeply ingrained cultural signal. Into this moment of harmony, Kelia spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "We need not embrace all aspects of each other's cultures, but we must create space for understanding. The festival harms no one. It bridges gaps that words alone cannot cross." Dr. Meral's luminescence pulsed in the rhythm of consideration. Finally, he spoke. "Perhaps a compromise. The festival may continue, but with advisory notices regarding cultural differences, and we will form a cultural reconciliation committee to establish clearer guidelines for future exchanges." The senior council member's luminescence flickered with reluctance, but he inclined his head in acceptance. Provided that explicit demonstrations of human physical intimacy remain restricted to educational contexts only. Director Hammond nodded from the screen. "That seems reasonable. We appreciate your willingness to find middle ground." As the emergency session adjourned, Alex found himself exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Lieutenant Lin clapped him on the shoulder. "That could have gone much worse," she said. "You've got quite an advocate in Kelia." Alex watched as Kelia was surrounded by Zionian colleagues, some congratulating her on the unity pattern, others questioning her defense of human practices. Her luminescence remained steady and confident, so different from the uncertain flickers he'd first known. "She's extraordinary," he agreed quietly. Later that night, as the festival wound down, Alex found Kelia in the botanical garden, a section of the station where plants from both worlds grew together under carefully calibrated conditions. The bioluminescent flora of Xion 5 created a magical atmosphere, their soft blue-purple glow mingling with the earth plants that reached toward them as if seeking their light. "That was impressive. What you did in the council chamber," Alex said, as he joined her beside a flowering earth rosebush that had been planted next to a luminescent Zionian vine. The two plants had grown together, the vine wrapping supportively around the rose's stem. "I simply spoke truth," Kelia replied, her luminescence gentle in the darkened garden. "Though I must admit, I did not expect to find myself defending human physical practices so soon after being horrified by them." Alex chuckled. Life is full of unexpected turns. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the interaction between the earth and Zionian plants. The rose seemed to flourish in the light provided by the vine, while the vine appeared strengthened by the structure of the rose. "I've been thinking," Kelia said after a while, "about your explanation of human touch as a spectrum of connection." "Oh?" Alex turned to face her. "I would like to understand it better, not just intellectually, but experientially." Her luminescence pulsed with what Alex now recognized as nervous anticipation. "Would you be willing to conduct a controlled experiment?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "What kind of experiment?" "A cuddle test, I believe humans call it." Kelia's luminescence flickered with embarrassment. "In a safe environment, with clearly established boundaries." Alex was careful to keep his expression neutral, not wanting to scare her off with too much enthusiasm. "I think that could be arranged. What parameters did you have in mind?" They set up their experiment in the medical bay, with biosensors to monitor both their physiological responses. Lieutenant Lin, present as both medical supervisor and chaperone, helped establish the protocols. "We'll start with the simplest form of contact, holding hands," Lin explained, setting up the monitoring equipment. "Then progress to a brief hug, if Kelia remains comfortable. All contact will be above clothing, brief in duration, and can be terminated immediately upon request." Kelia, sitting nervously on the edge of an examination table, nodded. Her luminescence pulsed rapidly. "This is for scientific understanding," she stated, as if reminding herself. "Absolutely," Alex agreed, taking the seat opposite her. "Just like any cross-cultural research." Lin finished calibrating the monitors and stepped back. "Whenever you're ready." Alex slowly extended his hand, palm up, just as he had during the storm. "We'll start just like before," he said gently. Kelia nodded, her luminescence intensifying as she carefully placed her hand in his. Unlike the barely there touch from before, this time she allowed her palm to rest fully against his. The monitors recorded immediate responses. Alex's pulse increased slightly, while Kelia's bioluminescence shifted to patterns associated with heightened emotional states. "How does it feel?" Lin asked clinically, noting the readings. "Warm," Kelia said softly. "His skin temperature creates a resonance with my light centers. It's pleasant, not invasive as I feared." They maintained the contact for several minutes, allowing the monitors to gather comprehensive data. When they finally separated, Kelia's luminescence continued to pulse in the resonance pattern for several seconds afterward. "Your oxytocin levels have increased by 22%, Lin noted, reviewing the human hormonal analysis, consistent with positive social bonding responses. "And my light resonance indicates increased serotonin production," Kelia added, examining her own readings, "which aligns with our ceremonies of community connection." "Would you like to try the next level?" Alex asked carefully. Kelia hesitated, then nodded. "I am prepared." They stood facing each other. "A hug between friends is typically brief," Alex explained. "Arms encircle the upper body in a gentle embrace, expressing support and affection. No reproductive implications whatsoever." "I understand," Kelia said, her luminescence pulsing rapidly. With slow, telegraphed movements, Alex stepped forward and gently wrapped his arms around her shoulders in a loose embrace. Kelia stood stiffly at first, her luminescence brightening dramatically at the contact. Then, gradually, she relaxed, her own arms cautiously coming up to rest lightly against his back. The monitors recorded substantial responses in both their physiologies: elevated heart rates, hormone cascades, neural activation in centers associated with positive emotional responses. But most striking was Kelia's luminescence, which burst into patterns more complex and vibrant than anything Alex had seen from her before. When they separated after the brief hug, Kelia appeared momentarily disoriented, her luminescence continuing to pulse in the new patterns. "Are you all right?" Alex asked, concerned. "Yes," she said, sounding surprised. "That was intense, but not in the way I expected. It felt like a full-spectrum light exchange, but through physical sensation instead." Lieutenant Lin reviewed the data with barely concealed amazement. "The neurological parallels between human touch response and Zionian light resonance are remarkable. They're activating almost identical pleasure and bonding centers, just through different sensory pathways. Different languages of connection. Alex quoted Kilia's words from the council chamber. Just as you said. Kilia's luminescence settled into a steady, contented glow. I believe we have gathered sufficient preliminary data to present to the Cultural Reconciliation Committee, she said formally, though her light patterns betrayed her continued emotional response. Sufficient for now, Alex agreed with a smile. The data from their cuddle test became the foundation for a groundbreaking joint research paper, presented to both the Station Council and Earth authorities. It demonstrated clear neurological and hormonal parallels between human, physical affection and Zionian light resonance. The paper proposed a framework for understanding these as equivalent expression systems, different evolutionary paths to the same emotional destinations. Conservative factions on both sides still expressed reservations, but the scientific evidence was compelling. Dr. Merrill, reviewing the findings, admitted that the parallels could not be ignored. While I maintain that our light-based connection is more refined, he said during a committee meeting, his luminescence pulsing with reluctant acceptance, I cannot deny that the underlying neurology shows remarkable similarities. Perhaps there is room for cultural accommodation. The Cultural Reconciliation Program that emerged established clear guidelines for cross-species interaction. Certain forms of human physical contact, hand-holding, brief hugs, forehead kisses, were formally recognized as acceptable expressions of friendship and support within the station, provided they were conducted with appropriate respect for consent and context. To celebrate this landmark agreement, Aurora 9 hosted the Festival of Luminescence, an event combining elements of Earth celebrations with Zionian light ceremonies. The central atrium was transformed with bioluminescent plants and soft earth music, creating an atmosphere where both species could feel comfortable. As the festival reached its peak, Alex found Kilia standing alone near the garden entrance, her luminescence glowing with patterns he now recognized as contentment and excitement. Quite a change from a few weeks ago, he commented as he joined her. Indeed, she agreed. From horror at the concept of human touch to helping establish protocols for its acceptance, life truly is full of unexpected turns. Alex smiled. None of this would have happened without your courage in the council chamber. You bridged worlds, Kilia. Her luminescence pulsed with modest embarrassment. I merely spoke truth as I had come to understand it. Sometimes that's the bravest thing anyone can do. Around them, humans and Zionians mingled with newfound ease. A young human researcher was learning a simple luminescence synchronization technique from a Zionian elder. Nearby, a Zionian scientist accepted a cautious handshake from Lieutenant Lin, his luminescence flickering with nervous excitement at the novel experience. May I? Alex asked, extending his hand. Kilia placed her hand in his without hesitation, their fingers intertwining naturally now. Her luminescence shifted into the special pattern that seemed reserved for their moments of connection. I've been authorized to lead a research expedition to the northern continent, Alex said, as they watched the festival unfold around them. To study the ecosystem there. I could use a knowledgeable local guide. The northern luminous forests are particularly beautiful, Kilia replied, her light pulsing with interest. I would be pleased to accompany you. In a moment of spontaneous courage, Alex leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on Kilia's forehead, one of the approved forms of contact under the new protocols. Her luminescence flared brightly in surprise, then settled into rhythmic pulses of pleasure. No matter how different our cultures, Alex said softly, I respect you and am willing to learn to love according to Zionian ways. But I hope you'll continue to open your heart to me as well. Give me the chance to understand your world. Kilia's entire body illuminated with radiant light, drawing delighted gasps from everyone in the atrium. The station erupted in cheers and applause, humans and Zionians alike celebrating this visible symbol of their new understanding. 1 year later, Aurora 9 welcomed a delegation of Zionian archaeologists preparing for their first expedition to Earth. The station had expanded significantly, with new research facilities and joint human-Zionian living quarters designed to accommodate the cultural practices of both species. Alex and Kelia had become the unofficial ambassadors of cross-species understanding, their joint research on interplanetary emotional connection having gained recognition throughout both worlds. Their work had helped establish protocols now being implemented at other contact points between the species. Standing together at the observation window, they watched Earth's blue-green light shimmer in the distance. Kilia's luminescence had grown even more expressive over the months of their partnership, developing patterns unique to their relationship.
"Other worlds will eventually learn as we have," she said, her voice thoughtful. "I want to go with you, explore those distant places."
Alex smiled.
"I've been refitting a small survey ship for the two of us. When we're ready, we'll go."
As the ship carrying the next group of Earth scientists appeared on the horizon, Kilia's bioluminescence merged with the blue-green light of Earth reflected in the window, creating a symphony of color that symbolized the hopeful interplanetary future they were building together.
"I once thought your physical intimacy was horrifying," she admitted, with a light pulse of amusement. "But now I realize it's just like language. It only needs the right context to be understood."
Alex squeezed her hand gently. "Different worlds, different ways. Same connection." "Same connection," Kelia agreed, her luminescence brightening with joy.
Together, they turned to welcome the newcomers, ready to guide another group through the delicate, rewarding process of cross-cultural understanding. One careful touch, one gentle light at a time.